The dialogue you are about to hear consists entirely of direct quotations from Einstein and Thoreau, and illustrates the parallels between the thinking of these legendary men. Tonight, Connie Baxter Marlow hosts Mystics Alive and Well, with guest star Dr. Albert Einstein, played by Andrew Cameron Bailey, and Henry David Thoreau, played by Richard Smith.
Good evening. I'm Connie Baxter Marlow. Welcome to Mystics Alive and Well. I'm so glad you could join us here in the studio this evening. And welcome to all you folks out there in TV land and from wherever you are. We're happy you could join us. We have two revered and honored guests with us tonight. They have brought many insights and modeled their lives for us through the years and brought much inspiration. Welcome, Dr. Albert Einstein and Henry David Thoreau. We're happy to have them here again this year to celebrate Henry's birthday. It's coming right up, isn't it, Henry?
Yes, Connie, actually in a few days, July 12th to be exact. And thank you for honoring me again with this interview on your show with Dr. Einstein. He thinks it is a most marvelous thing to be here. And Dr. Einstein, it is a pleasure to see you again.
Henry, it is just, you know, every time they beam us in from the dimension where we've been hanging out since we left Concord and New Jersey respectively. You know, I don't know if anybody recalls, but last time my mustache didn't make it through the beaming machine. It was very confusing. I couldn't figure out who the hell I was. However, Connie.
Welcome.
Good evening, Connie. I'm delighted to be back here. Actually, the fact is, you see, I love this planet. This planet is just extraordinary.
Well, Concord anyway.
New Jersey is almost.
In our previous show, we explored how your lifelong mystical experiences informed your lives, and how this expanded experience of reality led you to become game changers of your time, for all time. I've invited Dr. Einstein and Mr. Thoreau to join me on Mystics Alive and Well, because it is my understanding that they both saw and experienced an expanded reality beyond that experienced by most of us, and that this informed how they lived their lives day by day. They each stood up for what they believed in and stood out as exemplary people, sharing their insights and modeling a way of life outside of the norm of their times. We think of mystics as ascetics who live in caves, drink nothing but water, and contemplate the beyond. We think of them as someone other than ourselves. I would like to introduce you to the everyday mystic, and to these two extraordinary everyday mystics who changed the world by applying their expanded vision to their choices as to how they lived and responded to the issues of their times. The underlying thesis of this show is that every human being is an embodiment of a larger force and has the capacity to connect with that force, and through personal choice, bring inspired action to pass in everyday life and transform the world as we know it. As an exercise, I would like to ask you to turn to the person next to you and look in his or her eyes and say, "I see a force greater than each of us when I look in your eyes."
I see a force greater than each of us.
I acknowledge you as a unique aspect of that force.
I acknowledge you as a unique aspect of that force.
There. Now, we are on common ground with each other, and with the two men we are going to experience today, Henry David Thoreau and Dr. Albert Einstein, two mystics who changed the world. Mystics, you ask? A pencil maker? A land surveyor? A patent clerk? A teacher? A recluse? A physicist? What was it that drove them to excel and go down in history as game changers? along with a few others like Jesus, Gandhi, Martin Luther King Jr., John Lennon, notable activists who died untimely deaths because of the message they carried and the lives they lived. These people didn't remove themselves from the world. They stood up, spoke up, and shifted consciousness up a notch for eternity. They modeled their beliefs, their visions, and shared their insights. Henry, you have often been quoted as saying, "If a man does not keep pace with his companions, perhaps it is because he hears a different drummer. Let him step to the music which he hears, however measured or far away." The mystic hears a different drummer. He sees from a different point of view. He resonates to a different frequency. The station he is tuned to is sending messages of unity, freedom, peace, harmony, individual autonomy, service, and abundance. Those are the attributes of the world he knows is real and possible, regardless of the myriad of other stations and societies broadcasting the engaging and all too real seeming ideas of separation, scarcity, security, and servitude. I would like to propose that everyone has the capacity to tune in to the mystic's frequency. We can choose which station we turn the dial of our attention to. For some, it will come as a revelation or epiphany, a sudden aha moment like the switching on of a light switch. For others, it will take years of practice and daily attention. Others are born with awareness and spend their lives reconciling their inner and outer selves. Often, the mystical experience comes through crisis, deep loss, and the heart is broken open. The challenge comes what to do with it once it comes. Ignore it, shove it deep inside where no one can see it, put a mask over it and pretend it isn't there. Walk it, talk it, and become it, and in that way change the world. Now, Henry and Dr. Einstein, please tell us a little about how you first realized there was something greater than you at work in your lives.
A wonder of this kind I experienced as a child of 4 or 5 years, when my father showed me a compass. That this needle behaved in such a determined way did not at all fit into the kind of occurrences that could find a place in the unconscious world of concepts. I can still remember, or at least I believe I can remember, that this experience made a deep and lasting impression upon me.
Methinks my present experience is nothing. My past experience is all in all. I think that no experience which I have had today comes up to or is comparable with the true experiences of my boyhood. And not only this is true, but as far back as I can remember, I have consciously referred to the experience of a previous state of existence, for life is a forgetting. Formerly, methought, nature developed as I developed and grew up with me. My life was ecstasy. In youth, before I lost my senses, I can remember that I was all alive and inhabited my body with inexpressible satisfaction. Both its weariness and its refreshment were sweet to me. This earth was the most glorious musical instrument, and I was audience to its strains. To have such sweet inspirations made on us, such ecstasies begotten of the breezes, I can remember how I was astonished. I said to myself, I said to others, there comes into my mind such an indescribable, infinite, all-absorbing, divine, heavenly pleasure, a sense of elevation and expansion, and I have had naught to do with it. I perceive that I am dealt with by superior powers. This is a pleasure, a joy, an existence which I have not procured myself. I speak as a witness on the stand and tell what I have perceived. The morning and the evening were sweet to me, and I led a life aloof from society of men. I wondered if a mortal had ever known what I knew. I looked in books for some recognition of a kindred experience, but, strange to say, I found none. Indeed, I was slow to discover that other men had had this experience, for it had been possible to read books and to associate with men on other grounds. The maker of me was improving me. When I detected this interference, I was profoundly moved. For years, I marched as to a music in comparison with which the military music of the streets is just noise and discord. I was daily intoxicated, and yet no man could ever call me intemperate. With all your science, can you tell me how it is, and whence it is, that light comes into the soul?
So you both had boyhood experiences or realizations that influenced the unfolding of your lives.
And then, at the age of 12, I experienced a second wonder of a completely different nature in a little book dealing with Euclidean plane geometry, which came into my hands at the beginning of a school year. The assertions of geometry and lucidity and certainty made an indescribable impression upon me, and I began to see everything as geometric shapes.
Makes sense. It makes sense.
I would like to point out to you folks a few parallels in your lives to set the stage for our discussion today. Henry, you were an avid student, a voracious reader who studied philosophy and graduated from the nation's top school, Harvard University. You became a teacher, held a couple of mundane jobs as a pencil maker in your father's pencil business, where your research led to perfecting the Thoreau pencil, enabling it to become the best pencil in America. And you were a surveyor. You built a little house in the woods on your friend Ralph Waldo Emerson's land not far from town, where you spent 2 years, 2 months, and 2 days. You explored the wilderness in Maine and elsewhere, researched and befriended Native Americans, and documented your impressions in minute details in your journals and books. You took a stand against war and racism, disassociated yourself from your government at an early age, went to bat for fellow dissidents, and spent a night in jail, which resulted in a world-changing solution for how a moral man might live in an immoral world through nonviolent non-cooperation in your treaties, Civil Disobedience. Every word you uttered, every move you made has become a model and inspiration for the generations that followed. Dr. Einstein, you were slow to talk as a child.
That's true, but I haven't stopped since, have I? Since once I got the hang of it.
But you too were an avid student, a voracious reader who studied philosophy, perhaps even some of the same philosophers as Henry. It seems that Immanuel Kant and other German philosophers influenced both you and the Transcendentalists. Interestingly, your father had a factory that provided you with an opportunity to explore the workings of electricity and electromagnetism. You attended top schools and became a teacher, held a mundane job as a patent clerk, explored a different wilderness, the wilderness of the mathematical nature of the universe, which you recorded in your papers and dissertations. You too took a stand against war and racism, gave up your German citizenship twice, once at an early age and again as an adult. You supported fellow dissidents and enlightened humanity with your insights into the workings of light, matter, time, and energy. You were both witness to extraordinary times in humanity's development. Henry, during your lifetime in the 1800s, you witnessed rational, reductionist science replace holistic experiential knowledge in such a way that man thought himself separate from an uncaring mechanical universe. You witnessed the abomination of slavery and a war in Mexico aimed at extending slavery, which you entirely disagreed with. Dr. Einstein, you as a German Jew experienced the First World War, Hitler's rise to power, the Second World War, the Holocaust, with the loss of so many of your friends and family. You saw, much to your chagrin, the invention and deployment of the atomic bomb as an indirect result of your theories, and the onset of the nuclear age, the Cold War, and the threat of total annihilation of humanity. You both seem to have been eternal optimists, and you both spoke of universal higher laws and man's ability to interpret them and our potential to live in accordance with them as you watched humanity around you descend into lower, baser behaviors. It seems it was this ability to see higher truths that set you apart and has made your vision an inspiration to all that follow. The last time we were together, we discussed your views on government, education, war, and racism, as well as the role of intuition, universal law, and higher conscience in solving the dilemmas we faced in those arenas. We learned that your ability to see and experience an expanded reality set you apart from the majority and resulted in a certain loneliness for each of you and engendered a rebellious spirit.
How alone must our life be lived? We dwell on the seashore, and none between us and the sea. Men are my merry companions, my fellow pilgrims, who beguile the way, but leave me at the first turn on the road for none are traveling one road so far as myself.
But now I am old, so known in the world, and yet so lonely. Arrows of hate have been shot at me, but they have never hit me, because somehow they belong to another world, with which I have no connection whatsoever. Regarding education, school failed me, and I failed school. It bored me. The teachers behaved like Feldwebel, sergeants. I wanted to learn what I wanted to know. They wanted me to learn for the exams.
But what does education often do? It makes a straight-cut ditch of a free, meandering brook. Though bodily I've been a member of Harvard University, heart and soul, I was always far away among the scenes of my boyhood. As far as government goes, the government does not concern me much, and I shall bestow the fewest possible thoughts on it. It is not many moments that I live under a government, even in this world. If a man is thought-free, fancy-free, imagination-free, that which is not never for a long time appearing to be to him, unwise rulers or reformers cannot fatally interrupt him.
Dr. Einstein, you gave up your German citizenship when you were 16 to avoid mandatory military service and became stateless for 5 years. You subsequently became a Swiss citizen for the rest of your life, with dual citizenship in Germany for a bit, until you renounced it a second time and became an American citizen in 1933 when Hitler became Chancellor of the Third Reich and signed the Concordant with the Catholic Church. In your lifetime, you have experienced government out of control to the extreme, with the potential of total annihilation of life looming on the horizon, and have some definite ideas for a solution. In 1946, you wrote a public letter to the United Nations advocating the establishment of a world government. What is your vision of a world government? Could you share this with us?
I am interested only in living this life according to ethical laws, like thou shalt not kill, which often contradict the laws of the state. There is no security and peace unless we have a supranational government. We must liberate ourselves from what we have inherited of antisocial and destructive instincts. A new type of thinking is essential if mankind is to survive and move to higher levels. The cosmic man must be restored, the whole man, who is made in the image and likeness of the arch force, which you may call God. This man thinks with his heart. There is an order in the universe, a cosmic order, and humans have the possibility of understanding these laws.
Given the fact that you both have what I call an expanded understanding and relationship with the universe, from the infinitely small to the infinitely large, and embrace both the visible and invisible, I would like to explore your views and experience with science, something that you, Dr. Einstein, revolutionized with your lifelong commitment to seeking order in the universe, long after Henry had left the scene. It seems that through each of your lives and work, we witness an upward spiral of humanity's understanding of the nature of the universe, which is the goal of both religion and science. You, Dr. Einstein, brought science back from the reductionism of Newton and Descartes to an understanding of the warping of time-space relative to the observer, giving rise to quantum science, which today is bringing in a radically new paradigm with humanity's unfolding realization of the power of his mind in a conscious, interconnected universe, something the indigenous peoples of the world have known and experienced for millennia. Both you, Henry, and the indigenous people see that it is through nature that humanity can come to, as you say, read the mind of God or Creator and discover the working of universal laws, and the understanding of which might allow humanity to realize its highest potential and walk in balance with all of creation.
I am not interested in what God looks like, but in how the world he created looks. I can read the thoughts of God from nature. The laws of creation interest me, and not where the God is made in the image of man, with a long white beard, and has a son. I am part of infinity. I see everything in specie aeternitatis from the perspective of eternity.
My profession is to be always on the alert to find God in nature, to know his lurking places, to attend all the oratorios, the operas in nature. In the midst of this labyrinth, let us live a thread of life. We must act with so rapid and resistless a purpose in one direction that our vices will necessarily trail behind. The laws of the earth are for the feet or inferior man. The laws of heaven are for the head or superior man. The latter are the former, sublimed and expanded, even as radii from the earth's center go on diverging into space.
Henry, you have been called a poet naturalist because you integrated your mystical connection with nature and your scientific explorations in your writings that many believe inspired today's science of ecology and the environmental movement, neither of which, it seems, actually resonates at the depths of insight that you experienced.
Wisdom does not inspect, but beholds. We must look a long time before we can see. The true man of science will know nature better by his finer organization. He will smell, taste, see, hear, feel better than other men. His will be a deeper and finer experience. We do not learn by inference and deduction and the application of mathematics to philosophy, but by direct intercourse and sympathy. It is with science as with ethics. We cannot know truth by contrivance and method. The most scientific will still be the healthiest and friendliest man and possess a more perfect Indian wisdom.
There is no true science which does not emanate from the mysterious. Every thinking person must be filled with wonder and awe just by looking up at the stars.
The laws of nature are science, but in an enlightened moment they are morality and modes of divine life.
Science is never finished because the human mind uses only a small portion of its capacity, and man's exploration of his world is also limited. If we look at this tree outside, whose roots search beneath the pavement for water, or a flower which sends its sweet smell to the pollinating bees. Oh, I'm starting to sound like you.
You sound very transcendental, yes.
Or even our own selves and the inner forces that drive us to act, we can see that we all dance to a mysterious tune. I sound exactly like you. And the piper who plays this melody from an inscrutable distance, whatever name we give him, creative force or God, escapes all book knowledge.
So, Dr. Einstein, you might disagree with Henry, as it seems you are saying there is a reality beyond experience that somehow our reason will someday discover and interpret through mathematics, what Henry is perhaps calling contrivance and method.
It is up to each of us to also acquire knowledge independently of experience. If you think impure thoughts, then you can comprehend reality. Experience may help, but you are endowed with enough reason to extend physical reality without experience. Behind this visible solar system are many invisible ones, but you don't have to go there in order to know this. One must not think in terms of truth when one sees an object, for truth is a concept that exists only in thought and is expressed in sentences, because sentences deal with concepts. You must first make contact with reality, then form an intelligent picture of it by building a theory around it. First you observe, then you give substance to what you observe by means of mathematics. In this sense, what is real becomes true.
Indeed, it seems that both of you are speaking of what you seem to call real scientists, as directly and experientially connected to the cosmic order, with the higher purpose of interpreting the universal laws. You both see the connection between science and the divine because you had mystical experiences yourself and seem to see that science is an avenue for the logical conceptual mind to access the non-conceptual, ineffable arena that the religions have been attempting to articulate through the ages. You see the higher purpose of science, as well as the importance of religion.
I maintain that cosmic religious feeling is the strongest and noblest incitement to scientific research. Religion and science go together. Science without religion is lame, and religion without science is blind. They are interdependent and have a common goal, the search for truth. Hence it is absurd for religion to proscribe Galileo or Darwin or other scientists. And it is equally absurd when scientists say there is no God. The real scientist has faith, which does not mean that he must subscribe to a creed. Without religion, there is no charity. The soul given to each of us is moved by the same living spirit that moves the universe.
Henry, your theories and methods brought in the importance of relationship between the observer and the observed, one of the central principles of quantum science. You were a century and a half ahead of your time.
I think that the man of science makes this mistake, and the mass of mankind along with him, that you should coolly give your chief attention to the phenomenon which excites you as something independent of you, and not as it is related to you. The important fact is that its effect on me. He thinks that I have no business to see anything else, but just what he defines the rainbow to be. I find it is not rainbows themselves with which the men of science deal that concern me. The point of interest is somewhere between me and them, for instance, the rainbows.
Dr. Einstein, you decry the specialization and objectivization of science that has separated the scientist from his internal connection to the cosmos, which it seems you feel communicates with us through our intuition, our conscience.
Every serious scientific worker is painfully conscious of this involuntary relegation to an ever-narrowing sphere of knowledge, which is threatening to deprive the investigator of his broad horizon and degrade him to the level of a mechanic. We have all suffered under this evil without making any effort to mitigate it. Man is what he thinks, not what he does. The basis of true thinking is intuition. This is what makes me abhor our present-day school system. They split each science into several categories, yet truth is only attained by a totality of experience. I was never attracted by specialization. I always wanted to know nature, creation itself. The mystery of life attracted me. My religion is to use my thinking faculties as much as I can to know what seems unknowable. Have you ever stopped to consider that reading books or gathering facts has never led to any scientific discovery? Intuition is the prime factor in all of our achievements.
Exactly. Knowledge does not come to us in details, but in flashes of light from heaven.
Ah, yes.
If one listens to the faintest but constant suggestions of his genius, which are certainly true, he sees not to what extremes or even insanity it may lead him, and yet that way, as he grows more resolute and faithful, his road lies. The faintest assured objection which one healthy man feels will at length prevail over the arguments and customs of mankind. No man ever followed his genius till it misled him.
Dr. Einstein, how long did you work on your famous formula E=mc²? The formula that radically changed humanity's concept of space-time and our relationship to it, as well as energy and matter. What was the driving force that kept you going?
How long? For 9 years. But it wasn't only one formula. 1,000 were written and destroyed. Often I wanted to give up. At last, however, after endless labor and innumerable sleepless nights, I found it. My intuition made me work. Many people think that the progress of the human race is based on experience of an empirical, critical nature. But I say that true knowledge is to be had only through a philosophy of deduction. For it is intuition that improves the world, not just following the trodden path of thought. Intuition makes us look at unrelated facts and then think about them until they can all be brought under one law. To look for related facts means holding only what one has instead of searching for new facts. Intuition is the father of new knowledge, while empiricism is nothing but an accumulation of old knowledge. Intuition, not intellect, is the open sesame of yourself. One never goes wrong following his feeling. I don't mean emotion, I mean feeling, for feeling and intuition are one.
It is not the invitation which I hear, but which I feel, that I obey.
We all more or less, in the same way, say that a rose is red, smells like perfume, and feels like velvet. In other words, there is an objective reality which is conceived by the senses. And behind this objective reality are natural laws, which are the privilege of the scientist to discover. Nature doesn't know chance. It operates on mathematical principles. As I have said so many times, God does not play dice with the world. My goal was to unify physics. For over 20 years, I tried to build the electrodynamic and quantum theories into my relativity theory, but I have not succeeded. You must believe that the world was created as a unified whole, which is comprehensible to man. Of course, it's going to take an infinitely long time to investigate this unified creation. But to me, that is the highest and most sacred duty, unifying physics. Simplicity is the criterion of the universe.
Well, Dr. Einstein, you'll be fascinated to know that there's some breakthrough science unfolding as we speak, which is using the innate genius of mathematics to give us a revelatory picture of the laws that govern the universe, and explains through cosmometry, the geometry of the cosmos, humanity's pivotal place in all of creation.
Cosmometry? I am merely a link in the scientific chain. My students will carry on where I left off.
Henry, you too see and sense the unified wholeness of the cosmic order and the scientist's place in interpreting it, but decry specialization in the systems of objective analysis that have separated us from our interconnectedness to it.
I deal with truths that recommend themselves to me and please me, not those merely which some system has voted to accept. Science is inhuman. Things seen with the microscope begin to be insignificant. So described, they are as monstrous as if they should be magnified 1,000 diameters. Suppose I should see and describe men and houses and trees and birds as if they were 1,000 times larger than they are. With our prying instruments, we disturb the balance and harmony of nature. I received a letter from the Secretary of the Association of the Advancement of Science, and he requested to me, as he probably has thousands of others, by a printed circular letter from Washington, to fill the blanks against certain questions, among which the most important one was what branch of science I was especially interested in. I felt that it would be to make myself the laughingstock of the community, to describe or attempt to describe to them that branch of science which specially interests me, inasmuch as I do not believe in a science which deals with the higher law. So I was obliged to speak to their condition and describe to them that poor part of me which alone they can understand. The fact is, I am a mystic, a transcendentalist, and a natural philosopher to boot. How absurd that though I probably stand as near to nature as any of them, and am by constitution as good an observer as most, yet a truer account of my relation to nature should excite their ridicule only. If it had been the secretary of an association of which Plato or Aristotle was president, I should not have hesitated to describe my studies at once and in particular. The skeleton, which at first sight produces only a shudder in all mortals, becomes at last not only a pure, but a suggestive and pleasing object to science. The more we know of it, the less we associate it with any goblin of our imagination. The longer we keep it, the less likely it is that any such will come to claim it. We discovered that the only spirit which haunts it is a universal intelligence, which has created in it harmony with all nature. Science never saw a ghost, nor does it look for any, but it sees everywhere the traces and is itself the agent of a universal intelligence.
So you both speak of science's relationship to this universal intelligence, or what religion calls God, and a connection that seems to have been long lost in the 20th and 21st centuries as scientism forces all aspects of humanity's endeavors and perceptions into the box of the reductionist scientific paradigm, discounting anything that cannot be proven by the scientific method.
Exactly.
But the true scientist is possessed by the sense of universal causation. The future, to him, is every whit as necessary and determined as the past. There is nothing divine about morality. That is a purely human affair. His religious feeling takes the form of a rapturous amazement at the harmony of cosmic law, or the harmony of natural law, which reveals an intelligence of such superiority that compared with it, all the systematic thinking and acting of human beings is an utterly insignificant reflection. This feeling is the guiding principle of his life and work, insofar as he succeeds in keeping himself from the shackles of selfish desire. It is beyond question closely akin to that which has possessed the religious geniuses of all ages.
We fancy that this din of religion, literature, and philosophy, which is heard in pulpits, lyceums, and parlors, and temples, vibrates through the universe, and is as Catholic a sound as the creaking of the earth's axle. But if a man sleeps soundly, he will forget it all in between sunset and dawn. It is the 3-inch swing of a pendulum in a cupboard, which the great pulse of nature vibrates by and through each instant. When we lift our eyelids and open our ears, it disappears with smoke and rattle like the cars on the railroad. When I detect a beauty in any of the recesses of nature, I am reminded by the serene and retired spirit in which it requires to be contemplated of the inexpressible privacy of a life, how silent and unambitious it is. The beauty there is in mosses must be considered from the holiest, quietest nook. What an admirable training is science for the more active warfare of life. Indeed, the unchallenged bravery which these studies imply is far more impressive than the trumpeted valor of any warrior.
Oh my goodness. We're out of time, gentlemen.
Already.
I'm wondering if each of you would like to leave a parting thought with our audience tonight. Something they might carry with them as they return to their lives.
If we want to improve the world, we cannot do it with scientific knowledge, but with ideals. Confucius, Buddha, Jesus, and Gandhi have done more for humanity than science has done. We must begin with the heart of man. This is conscience. And the values of conscience can only be manifested by selfless service to mankind. The ancients knew something which we seem to have forgotten. All means prove but a blunt instrument, if they have not behind them a living spirit. But if the longing for the achievement of the goal is powerfully alive within us, then we shall not lack the strength to find the means for reaching the goal and for translating it into deeds.
Very good. I do not propose to write an ode to dejection, but to brag as lustily as Chanticleer in the morning, standing on his roost, if only to wake my neighbors up. We must learn to reawaken and keep ourselves awake, not by mechanical aids, but by an infinite expectation of the dawn, which does not forsake us even in our soundest sleep. I know of no more encouraging fact than the unquestionable ability of man to elevate his life by a conscious endeavor.
So, wake up and open our hearts. Serve mankind with conscious endeavor from our higher conscience. Thank you, Dr. Albert Einstein. Thank you, Henry David Thoreau. And thank you, audience, for joining us tonight.
Thank you.